What is going on, guys? Smooth Racing here, back with another video, and today then we've got our what can we learn from Jerez testing. This is our full Jerez review and analysis of the 4 days from Jerez, Spain. So first of all then we'll be going through all the teams and the drivers and discussing how their test went. So first of all then, let's start off with the reigning world champions, Red Bull. Well, they probably had the worst test out of any of the teams. They only completed 21 laps and they only had a fastest time of 1:38.320. And of course, just getting those 21 laps in, it's the least of any of the teams. They had problems on each and every day. I think an interesting fact was that the recovery truck did more laps than the Red Bull. Ricardo did 10, Vettel did 11. Ricardo didn't actually set a lap, so minimal running for those two drivers then. Not very good to see. Definitely not what the drivers will want to be doing. They'll want to be getting a good feel for the car, but they can't do that because the car might need redesigning. It might need, the engine cooling unit might need redesigning or something like that, or they need to sort it out with Renault before the Bahrain test, because if they're missing them due to reliability, they could be way behind the rest of the field and could be really struggling in the opening races, and that could hurt them for the rest of the season. So if Red Bull don't get it sorted by Bahrain, they could be in major trouble. Moving on then to Mercedes, and from a very bad weekend, for a very bad week for Red Bull, it's certainly been a very good week for Mercedes. Hamilton completed 121 laps and Rosberg did a 188. That's altogether 309. That's the most laps of anyone we saw over the week. Mercedes getting plenty of running and some really good reliability, of course, apart from that day one where the front wing came off. But that soon got sorted, certainly a lot quicker than Red Bull's problems have. And they were back out running, and Rosberg's done plenty of laps, Hamilton's done plenty of laps, and I'm sure Mercedes and the drivers will be really happy with their effort over the week. Hamilton was second fastest on day one and Hamilton was third on day 3. Maybe not some headline times, but they're just really consistent, and the time's actually pretty consistent as well. And they say, the highest amount of laps, the more laps you do, the better in testing, and Mercedes did the most, so they'll have some very good data, and hoping to continue their form into Bahrain. Moving on then to Ferrari, and Kimi Raikkonen was 5th fastest with a 1:24.8. He did 78 laps. And then in 7th place was Fernando Alonso, who did a 1:25.588 and did 173 laps, so he got plenty of running. The home crowd turned out to see their man, and certainly did a lot of laps over day 3s and 4. So Raikkonen wouldn't have got as many laps because obviously on day 1 and day 2, they were still just doing plenty of installation laps and trying to work out a good feel for the car. So yeah, 251 laps, and that's the second most of anyone, just behind Mercedes, and they were fastest on day 1. They were second on day 2 and day 4. So overall then, a really good test for Ferrari. And we're moving on to someone else who had a really good test, McLaren. So first of all then, it did start quite badly as they didn't get any running done on the first day. But after that, it was miles and miles from McLaren. Kevin Magnussen set the fastest time of anyone throughout the week. He did a 1:23.276. He also completed 162 laps. He did crash on the final day and did have a few spins. Just a bit of a blip in his performance. And then Button was 4th fastest and he did 83 laps. Some people could say Magnussen outperformed him, but I don't think that's really true at the moment. It's certainly too early to see how good Magnussen is. But it's certainly good signs for McLaren and certainly good signs for Kevin Magnussen for the future. Moving on then to probably the best of the midfield teams, and that was Williams at the Jerez test. In 2nd place was Felipe Massa driving as Williams. He did 133 laps. He got a 1:23.700. In 6th place was Bottas with a 1:25.495. He did 42 laps, and altogether then between Massa and Bottas, they did 175 laps. That's the fourth most of anyone. and they were showing some really, good times, some really good headline times. They were fastest on the final day. They were third on day 1 and second on day 2 and day 3. So every day they were in the top 3 in terms of timesheets, and if they can continue that form, there's no reason why Williams can't be back at the front again. Moving on then to another midfield team, and my favourite team, Force India. They're probably the most consistent in terms of lap times because they actually run 3 drivers. Nico Hulkenberg was 9th, Perez was 10th, and the reserve driver, I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, was 11th. So the reserve driver then did the most laps of any of the Force India drivers. He got 81 laps in, which was some really good experience for him, and he did look mighty fast. He was 3rd on the final day, and that was his day. Hulkenberg got 17 laps, so not much running for him, but I'm sure he'll cope, and hopefully he'll probably get most of the running at Bahrain to make up for it. And Sergio Perez did 48 laps with a best time of 1:28.3. So it was kind of an okay test for Force India. They got 146 laps, so I think they'll be fairly pleased, and gave their reserve driver 81 laps. So Sauber then, Sutil was 13th fastest with a 1:30.1, and he did 103 laps, so plenty of running for the German. 15th, 2 places below him, was his teammate Gutierrez. He did 60 laps, best time of a 1:33.2. But the main thing that basically happened to Sauber then, they crashed on 3 of the 4 days of testing. Not really that good to see. I think Sutil crashed on day 3 and 4, and then I think Gutierrez crashed on day 2. I think only one of them was a mechanical failure, so just a bit of driver error, and they are both quite crashy drivers, so maybe they won't be the most consistent. Hopefully they can get that sorted. Sutil did say he crashed because there was so much torque on the engine, so that's obviously just a case of him getting used to it. So a fairly good test then for Sauber. They got plenty of running with 163 laps, and that was of course more than their rivals Force India. So a fairly average test for Sauber. Moving on then to Toro Rosso, and obviously they launched the car on the Monday, and then the following day they were wanting to test, but they didn't really get much running in over the whole test. They only completed 54 laps. That was mainly due to the Renault engine failing. I mean, Verne did a 1:29.9 to go 12th fastest over the week. He did 45 laps, when his teammate Kvyat, this rookie who hasn't got much F1 mileage, didn't get much more, to be honest. He only got 9 laps and 1:44.0, and it was quite unlucky for Kvyat. Hopefully he can get a bit more running in Bahrain. Moving on then to Caterham, and in 16th was Ericsson, in 18th was Kobayashi, and his 21st was Rabbit France, who didn't actually set a lap, but he got 10 laps in. Kobayashi did the most on day 4. He got 54 laps, and that was the most of any Renault team. Caterham got a good 76 laps, and I'm sure they'll be sharing that with Toro Rosso, Lotus and Red Bull. So overall then, they got 46 more laps than Marussia despite having engine troubles. So in terms of relative to Marussia, Caterham had a good weekend. But yeah, let's move on to Marussia then. Well, Max Chilton didn't set a lap time on day 3, and he only managed 10 laps. But there was some really promising signs on the final day of testing. Bianchi did a 1:33.2 and he did 25 laps. And he just looked, the Marussia car does look really nice. It was launched on day 3. It looks very nice to look at, and it also looks like a quite quick car. So I'm quite pleased with Marussia. I thought it might be Caterham, but it might be faster, but I'm tipping Marussia to move up to the midfield in 2014. Anyway then, I hope you have enjoyed my roundup, and just to finish off then, the most laps run then by power unit. With the Mercedes, they got 875 with 4 teams. Ferrari was second, they got 444 laps using 3 teams, and Renault only getting 151 with 3 teams. So Renault's main objective then is to fix those problems before Bahrain. And speaking of Bahrain then, I'll be giving you full previews and reviews of every day from the Bahrain test. But that'll be all from me then. I've been Smooth Racing. You can leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments, and it's goodbye from me.